we're just gonna do it. It's the most boring intro ever.
It just has to happen though. I don't know what you want me to do.
Okay, fine. Okay.
All right.
This is SportsZone.
Welcome back to SportsZone. This is your favorite baseball segment, Getting to Third Base. I'm Kristen. I have Aviva here with me. And we first wanted to hit on a big signing that broke yesterday. Eric Hosmer signed an 8-year deal with the San Diego Padres for $144 million. Aviva, I'd just like to get your initial reaction to that.
I think it's an interesting deal that the Padres did, giving him $144 million for 8 years. He was on the Kansas City Royals last year. His batting average was .318. So he's definitely bringing a big bat to the Padres, who were 20 games below 500. They came in 4th out of 5th in the NL West. So I think he's going to help them in going maybe a little to the next level. I don't know. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs with him. One big hitter isn't really going to make a big difference. He'll probably bat 3rd or 4th, and pitchers will probably pitch around him because the Padres don't really have another big star hitter. The player that had the highest was in 263. So there's a difference between 263 and 318. But I don't know. We'll see how the Padres go around where he's going to be in the lineup.
And I think it's also really interesting that he's 28 years old and they offered him such a big contract for so long. 8 years is a long time. So we'll have to see if he's able to really keep up the numbers that he was able to put up in his younger years as he gets a little bit older. So it'll definitely be interesting to see that.
And one thing that I forgot to say is I think this actually might be good for the Padres because now other people know that he's going and Padres are willing to commit to good players. So maybe it'll bring other people to the Padres. So for the future.
And then transitioning from the NL West to the NL East, I just wanted to hit on the Mets really quickly. They signed starting pitcher Jason Vargas to a 2-year deal. And it's really going to be interesting to see how he fits into the rotation. The Mets have a really strong starting 5. Kind of with the exception of Zach Wheeler and Steven Matz, we're not really sure if they're going to be able to really perform up to the same standards as the first 3. So Aviva, I just wanted to get your take on this. Do you think that the addition of Jason Vargas is really going to be able to motivate pitchers like Wheeler and Matz to perform well in spring training so they secure their spot in the rotation?
Yeah, I think spring training is really important, especially for Matz and Wheeler. They want to prove themselves. Wheeler got hurt a few years ago and Matz was hurt and didn't really do that well last year. So I think spring training, having the Mets sign someone, will actually put a fire in Matz's and Wheeler's brain, and hopefully they do well. But the Mets have that option that if Jason Vargas does do well, then he'll be in the starting 5. So he's also proving his point. He wants to be in that starting 5. So I guess we'll see what happens.
And then sticking with the Mets, I just want to close it out talking about David Wright. He reported to spring training and he had a conference with the media yesterday. And it's going to be really interesting to see what role he's going to be able to play with the team. He was asked if he is going to be able to play, and he keeps saying that he doesn't know and he's just trying his best to be healthy enough to play. So Aviva, I just want to ask you one last thing. What do you think is going to be David Wright's role this season with the Mets?
I think he's a mentor. He might not, he's still coming back from his back injury. He might not play as much as he wants to, as much as fans might want him to, but he's a huge mentor for the young players. The starting pitchers, they've been in the league for 2 or 3 years, but they're still young. David Wright, he's been in the league on the Mets for a very long time in comparison to other players on the team. Absolutely. So I think he's going to be super important in keeping the young players in check.
And I personally do think that he's going to be able to get healthy enough to at least play a certain amount of times a week. Definitely not going to be starting every single game because that's beyond what he's capable of doing at this point. But I think it really plays in his credit how he just continues to really work hard every single day. And he could just hang it up and decide to retire, but he really wants to see it out with the Mets and give it another run. So I think a lot of people, including myself, are really rooting for David Wright and hope that he can get back on the field this year. But that's all the time that we have for Getting to Third Base, and stick around for more SportsZone after this.
Welcome back to SportsZone. This is our college basketball segment, which I inaugural college basketball segment. I don't really think we have a name for the segment, but I'm joined by Kristen, and we'll start talking about probably one of the most dangerous teams in college basketball right now that nobody's really talking about. St. John's is on a bit of a run, 4-game winning streak, including beating Duke and Villanova, two of the best teams in college basketball. Kristen, what sort of has been a change for St. John's that's allowed them to go on this nice run?
So I think really what has propelled St. John's to go on this run is the fact that in the month of January they lost 11 straight games, but they were all really, really close games. So I think just a combination of leadership by Chris Mullen and from Shamorie Ponds that they really wanted to push themselves over the edge because they felt like they really deserved to win a lot of the games that they lost. So having Shamorie Ponds really take control and score as many points as he's been scoring consistently has really been a big push for St. John's. And also, while they have a big star in Shamorie Ponds, it's not just him that is leading the team. They also have Tariq Owens, who's one of the leading shot blockers in the Big East Conference, and Justin Simon has also been shooting really well for them. So I think it's just been a combination of the fact that they did a lot of losing in games that they really could have won, and Chris Mullen, just being the great coach that he is, has really propelled St. John's.
And they're definitely getting hot at the right time, because in years past we've seen it's not necessarily the best team, it's who's playing the best at the right time. So they certainly are playing themselves in a good position to potentially put themselves in NCAA tournament conversation. And one of their victories, as I mentioned, over Villanova. Villanova, who for a long time was the number one team in the nation, but sort of has dropped off a little bit after that loss to St. John's, also losing to Providence. So they sort of have fallen back a little bit. And Kristen, do you think that makes Villanova a little bit vulnerable in the Big East, losing these past two of their last 3 games?
I think for sure. I think definitely the loss to St. John's was really shocking to Villanova. Again, Shamorie Ponds had a career night that night against Villanova, and I think going into the Big East tournament, really anything can happen. And the fact that they lost these 2 games recently to teams that they really should have beaten definitely makes them vulnerable going into the Big East tournament, because anything can happen there. If you get on a run, you can roll through that tournament and make it to the NCAA. So I really think that Villanova might be in a little bit of trouble.
They were able to bounce back a little bit over the weekend, getting a victory over Xavier, but they've sort of fallen off the lead pack in terms of best teams in the country. Other teams like Virginia and Michigan State have sort of prospered on Villanova's couple losses. So Kristen, I'll pose the question, which team do you think with Villanova's struggles is now taking the mantle as the best team in the country?
I think definitely Michigan State has really stepped up in the wake of Villanova losing big games. They've only lost 2 games in the month of January and February, which is obviously very impressive. So I think as long as they can continue to be strong, that they pose a great challenge to Villanova and being one of the best in the country.
Yes, certainly. They just last weekend beat Purdue, who at that time was the number 4 team in the country, and showed a lot of character yesterday, coming back from 22 points down against Northwestern, holding Northwestern to 11 points in the second half. So Tom Izzo's crew, while there's a lot of uncertainty and sort of controversy surrounded that entire university, that team is still performing well given all of that. But UVA is the team that's number 1 in the rankings, but they lost last week to rival Virginia Tech, so it'll be interesting when the new rankings come out this week to see if Michigan State maybe slides into the number 1 spot. But that's all the time we have for this unnamed college basketball segment. Possibly more analysis in the weeks to come as we get closer to March Madness, but stick around for more SportsZone after this. Hello and welcome back to a special segment of SportsZone. It is our Olympics segment, Passing the Torch. I'm joined by Aviva, and this special segment because the Olympics only come around every 2 years, really. So the Winter Olympics, a special event in Pyeongchang, South Korea this year. Lots of excitement there for some old athletes and some athletes that maybe a lot of people haven't heard of before making a name for themselves. So I think we'll start. The United States has racked up a pretty solid medal count in the first week of the Games. They won their first gold medal in snowboard slope style with one of these athletes that I think a great story, the Olympics, who nobody had heard of before the Olympics, Aviva, and that's Red Gerard.
Yeah, he's a 17-year-old. No one even heard of his name before. He was in that event, and he was down for his first 2 runs. On his 3rd run, he knew he had it to get a high score, and then I think he got a score of like 87. So he definitely did really well, and now everyone knows who he is. And he even said after the event that like he's gonna go take a nap and like be a 17-year-old kid. So that was really cool, and it was really nice to see that was the USA's first medal.
Yeah, it was a very nice overnight sensation for him. The U.S. usually does dominate those type of extreme sport type events, but usually a lot of the names are not some that we're familiar with. But transitioning from one 17-year-old who was unknown to one 17-year-old who entered the Olympics with a lot of hype and a lot of expectations, that was Chloe Kim in the women's half-pipe event in snowboarding. And Aviva, she really met the expectations in her run, didn't she?
Yeah, she did really well. She actually qualified for Sochi 4 years ago when she was 13, but did not compete because she was under the age limit. So she was even really good 4 years ago, and she lived up to the hype. She got the gold medal. She got a score in the low 90s, high 90s, and it was really good to see someone who everyone kept saying that they were excited to see her, and she definitely lived up to the hype.
Yeah, she definitely did, landing back-to-back 1080s on her run, which I think for the first time ever in the women's division of that sport. Her dad becoming a big sensation as well. But it's always nice when you hear about these athletes and then you actually see them perform and them really exceeding all realistic expectations you have, and seeing some of the things that they do, twisting about in the air like that. Someone who, on the male side, the U.S. also entered the event with a favorite and were able to come out with a victory, a name probably people were more familiar with, that's Shaun White. But he was on a bit of a redemption trail this time, Aviva, and he again earned his third gold medal in the event.
Yeah, he got hurt in October. He suffered an injury to his face, and he got over 70 stitches on his face, and people were wondering if he will be able to do really well in the Olympics, and he met and exceeded those expectations. He got a score of like 98 on his snowboarding event. So it was really nice to see, and yeah.
Yeah, especially for him. He medaled in 2006 and 2010, but then missed out on the podium in Sochi, falling on his final run there. So even adding to that redemption, to that injury you talked about that he suffered right before the games, lots of questions surrounding him. Shifting from the snow sort of to the ice, an event that captivates everybody, the neutrals' attention, that's ice skating. The United States had some of these fiery characters that everybody latched onto, that of Adam Rippon, the 28-year-old skater who unfortunately did miss out on the podium, but helped the U.S. get a team bronze in the event. But the event was really dominated by a Japanese Yuzuru Hanyu, Aviva, who made history at this Olympic Games.
Yeah, he was the first male to win back-to-back gold medals in ice skating, and that has been done in over 66 years. So it was a great accomplishment for him.
Certainly. Ice skating, it seems like there's a lot of turnover. It's a young person's game, but to win it twice shows sort of longevity and speaks to the greatness of maybe an athlete that a lot of people haven't heard of, but is a national hero and now is somebody that a national audience has certainly heard of. We talked about comebacks with Shaun White. Another athlete who was well known to the American public was making a comeback of her own at this Olympics after missing out in the Sochi Games in 2014, and that was Lindsey Vonn. She competed in the Super G alpine skiing event Friday night, and Aviva, it didn't really go according to plan for Lindsey Vonn, did it?
Yeah, she missed the podium. She hasn't been in the Olympics in over 8 years, and she definitely did not do as well as she was hoping she could do. So it's really sad to see, and a lot of people are not being nice to her because of it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate she's facing a lot of backlash there, but she will also compete in the downhill event as well, so another chance for her maybe to get some redemption and get a medal. In alpine skiing, it's such a tight margin. She finished 0.2 of a second slower than the person who gold medaled, so the margins of victory in that sport are so fine. But she'll be looking for another medal of her own. And sort of transitioning finally before we sign off, the Olympics as a whole offer a chance to sort of view a lot of sports that a casual viewer wouldn't normally get to see. So Viv, I'll just ask you, what sport sort of is the most interesting to you that you get to watch that is not normally on TV or don't normally get to see?
So I have two. One is skeleton. Skeleton is a very dangerous sport. You lie on your stomach, you go face down, and you go over like 80 miles per hour down and these turns, and it's really scary. But it's also like fun to watch, and I know that I would never be able to do that. So that's definitely interesting. And another one's curling. I think I'm one of a few people who actually enjoy watching curling. It's really cool that they sweep and I don't know. I really like it. But also the in Jamaica, it was the first time that a women's team qualified and made the Olympics in the bobsleighing. So that's really nice to see. So
it certainly is. Those are the stories that sort of make the Olympics. Those stories that captivate the heart. They may not necessarily win the event, but they certainly will become sensations, bring a lot of eyes to their sport as well, and that's, I think, what the Olympics are all about. Mm-hmm. That sort of wraps it up for our recap of the first week of the Olympic Games. We be back next week to talk about the second week of the Olympic Games and sort of wrap up the events in Pyeongchang, but stick around for more SportsZone after this.
Welcome back to SportsZone. This is your favorite segment, Thumbs, where we talk about the good, the bad, the ugly in the world of sports and the world at large. I'm going to start off. Thumbs up to the AU women's basketball team. They won yesterday against Lafayette. They're 15-0 in the Patriot League and 22-4 overall. So they're definitely making AU very proud. Thumbs up to spring training. The start of baseball is coming. I can feel it in my fingertips. Thumbs up to the Olympics. It's so much fun watching it and being proud of the USA and watching all these sports that you don't normally watch, but in these 2 weeks you get to watch them. And then thumbs middle to the weather that we had, the snowy weather yesterday. I really like the snow, but I don't like it when it's hailing and sleeting on me. So that was not fun. And then here's Kristen.
I'm going to give a thumbs up to Aviva and Vince. We were really short-staffed today, but somehow we still put a show together, which is fun. I'll give a thumbs up to spring training. I'm heading down to Florida on Thursday, so I'm really excited about that. Thumbs up to David Wright for reporting to spring training and being there and talking to the media yesterday. I really hope that you can play this season. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're able to do. And then I'll give a thumbs up to St. John's basketball. They're playing Marquette on Wednesday, and they just beat Marquette a week ago, so I'm hoping that they can continue to play well and win. And that's all the thumbs I have. Here's Vince.
All right. I'll throw a thumbs up to the old style of thumbs. There's so few of us here that we're actually all able to sit on the table at the same segment, so it's a good and a bad thing, I guess. I'll also throw a thumbs up to the women's basketball team. They are really, really good. It seems like they've basically locked up the top seed, so they're going to be hosting the tournament at Bender Arena. It's unfortunate that it sort of falls on spring break a little bit, or the championship game is during spring break if they get there, so that will be unfortunate because the students won't be able to watch that. I'll also throw thumbs up to the AU wrestling team because they won last night. Kristen and I were there in Bender Arena for probably the least exciting sporting event I've ever watched in my life. I'll throw thumbs down to the VCU men's basketball team. They had a terrible week. They lost to Davidson at home for their fifth loss at home this season, which is just terrible. And they not to be topped by that, and they went and they lost by 25 to George Washington on the road, and George Washington's in one spot off the bottom in the A10, so VCU is just trending the wrong direction, lost 4 of 5. They can't shoot, and they can't defend, and that's a recipe for not being able to win. Thumbs up to the Olympics. I too enjoy watching obscure sports that I would never try in a million years, nor do I even comprehend how they do some of the things that they're doing, so that's always fairly exciting. I'll throw a thumbs up to Champions League because it was back this week. Didn't really get to talk about it on the show, but lots of good results. Tottenham against Juventus was a really, really good game. Real Madrid beat PSG in another really exciting game. So the Champions League is back in full force and was very exciting. And finally, I'll throw a thumbs up to Arsenal. They're not in the Champions League. They're the Europa League. They beat a Swedish team. I won't try and say their name because there's like lots of letters that I don't know how to say. But they won. Nobody got hurt on the plastic turf there, and nobody got frostbite, even though it was like -8 degrees Celsius there. So that is a positive. That'll wrap us up. So thank you to Kristen and Aviva. We 3 people strong. We put out a show this week. Hopefully more people show up next time. But until then, thank you for watching SportsZone.
It's our intro.
I don't know. I feel like we should just, even if it's like, we should all just say it.
Okay.
Unless you have a different idea.
Welcome to SportsZone.
Just this is SportsZone.
Just welcome to SportsZone.
No.
Oh, just say SportsZone.
When do
No.
we ever say welcome to SportsZone?
Oh, this is
This is
SportsZone.
SportsZone.
This is SportsZone.
Uniforms, it's like a struggle.
That's why I like St. John's, because they're so bold. It's like,
Marquette also wears blue. Like
Yes.
there's too much blue.
yes.
That's my opinion on college basketball.
Hard-hitting analysis. As always.
Too many teams wear blue.
Okay, yeah. So if you want to, obviously I can't talk about VCU, so you can do that. But if you want to, ask me,
I want to talk about that.
Are you really trusting me with
I
this?
feel like, why not? What else are we going to do?
Suffered a nose injury.
What other sports are
Yeah,
there?
don't say he hurt his face, though.
Suffered an injury. Okay.
To his face.
I just feel like we have to do Olympics because
I feel like somebody would be mad if we
it's
didn't
the
do the
Olympics.
Olympics.
We can't just not do it.
We can Shaun White,
Okay.
then everyone's favorite male figure skater, Yuzuru Hanyu, and then the skeleton. Well, I'll think of a creative way to toss to the skeleton.
Skeleton. Oh my. It's like 80 miles per hour. They go 80 miles per hour. Do you not understand how fast that is? I'm talking about that. I believe in us.
What are we calling this segment again?
Passing the torch.
Passing
That's
the
really
torch.
good. That's really good. Did you think of that?
pass it to Aviva. You should have it.
No.
In downhill or snowboard. All right, you know what? I'm gonna call an audible, and I want to restart because that was poor.
No, it's good. It's fine. We're good.
You're fine.
We'll just shake it out. All right.
You forgot to stretch, Vince.
I have been a little bit tight recently. All right.